Sometimes, the man hurting you isn't cruel, he's broken. And that's what makes it dangerous, because his pain slowly becomes your pain. If you've ever felt emotionally drained, confused, or questioning your worth while loving someone who gives you just enough to stay, this video is for you. Today, we're exposing the subtle signs of an emotionally broken man who isn't healing, he's using, not always intentionally, but always at your expense. And once you recognize these patterns, you'll never ignore the red flags again. When we hear the phrase emotionally broken, we often imagine someone who's openly damaged, withdrawn, or obviously struggling. But in reality, emotional brokenness is usually much quieter and far more confusing. It's not about weakness, it's about unhealed wounds that quietly shape how someone loves, connects, and attaches. An emotionally broken man may appear confident, charming, even emotionally aware on the surface. But underneath, there's unresolved pain, past betrayals, childhood neglect, abandonment, or relationships that taught him that closeness equals loss. Instead of processing that pain, he adapts. He learns how to stay emotionally guarded while still seeking connection. This creates a contradiction. He craves intimacy, but fears it at the same time. So he reaches for emotional comfort without offering emotional responsibility. He leans on a woman for validation, stability, or reassurance, but pulls away the moment things require depth, consistency, or accountability. What makes this especially harmful is that his behavior isn't always malicious. He may genuinely care, but not in a way that's safe or sustainable. His emotional world is fractured, and without healing, he unconsciously uses others to regulate his pain. Understanding this isn't about excusing the behavior. It's about recognizing that emotional brokenness doesn't stay contained, it spreads. And the longer you stay unaware, the more likely you are to carry wounds that were never yours to begin with. One of the clearest signs that an emotionally broken man is using a woman is this: he wants the emotional rewards of a relationship without accepting the responsibility that comes with it. He wants closeness, reassurance, attention, and emotional support, but he resists labels, consistency, and accountability. He may call you when he's overwhelmed, stressed, lonely, or unsure of himself. You become the place he unloads his fears, his frustrations, his doubts. You listen, you encourage, you reassure him when his confidence dips. In those moments, he leans on you like a partner, but when it's time to show up emotionally for you, he disappears, deflects, or minimizes your needs. This creates a one-sided emotional exchange. You give empathy, time, and understanding while he keeps his options open. He avoids defining the relationship, postpones commitment conversations, or says things like, "I'm not ready right now, I don't want to rush," or "I just need to focus on myself." On the surface, these statements sound honest, even mature. But over time, they become a pattern of emotional extraction without emotional investment. What makes this dynamic especially damaging is how inconsistent it feels. When he needs comfort, he's present, vulnerable, even affectionate. When you ask for clarity, stability, or reassurance, he suddenly feels pressured or overwhelmed. This push and pull keeps you emotionally hooked, constantly hoping the version of him who opens up will eventually stay. An emotionally healthy man understands that emotional intimacy and commitment go hand in hand. An emotionally broken man separates the two. He takes what soothes him while avoiding what requires him to grow. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to overextend, giving more patience, more understanding, more time, believing that your emotional labor will eventually inspire commitment. But commitment doesn't grow from emotional convenience. It grows from emotional responsibility. Recognizing this sign isn't about hardening your heart. It's about protecting it. Because when someone benefits from your emotional presence without committing to your emotional well-being, the cost is always paid by you. Another major sign of an emotionally broken man using a woman is his hot and cold behavior. One moment he's attentive, affectionate, emotionally open. He texts first, checks in, makes you feel chosen and deeply connected. And just when you begin to relax into that closeness, he pulls away. There's no clear explanation, no conflict, no warning. His energy shifts, messages slow down, plans become uncertain, emotional warmth turns into distance, and suddenly, you're left replaying conversations in your head, wondering what you did wrong. This inconsistency isn't accidental. It's the result of emotional instability. An emotionally broken man often oscillates between craving connection and fearing it. When intimacy feels good, he moves closer. When it starts to feel real or requires emotional consistency, his unresolved wounds trigger withdrawal. What makes this dynamic so powerful is how it affects you. The unpredictability keeps you emotionally alert, constantly trying to get back to the good moments. You start measuring your worth by his attention. When he's warm, you feel secure. When he's distant, anxiety sets in. Over time, you may find yourself lowering your expectations, accepting breadcrumbs, or overanalyzing your behavior just to maintain emotional peace. That's not love, that's emotional conditioning. An emotionally healthy man may need space, but he communicates it clearly and returns with consistency. An emotionally broken man disappears emotionally, then reappears as if nothing happened, expecting access to you without addressing the damage caused by his absence. This push and pull creates an emotional roller coaster that bonds you through confusion, not trust. And while he may not consciously intend to hurt you, the impact is the same: emotional exhaustion, self-doubt, and a constant sense of instability. Hot and cold behavior isn't passion. It's unresolved pain playing out in real time. And if consistency feels like too much for him, the inconsistency will eventually become too much for you. An emotionally broken man often connects through shared pain rather than emotional stability. Early on, he may open up quickly, sharing deep wounds, past betrayals, childhood trauma, or stories of how others hurt him. This level of vulnerability can feel intimate, even special. It creates the sense that you understand him in a way no one else does. But here's the problem: pain disclosure is not the same as emotional availability. Instead of gradually building trust, safety, and mutual support, the bond forms around rescuing, fixing, or soothing him. You begin to feel responsible for his emotional state. When he's struggling, you step in. When he's triggered, you excuse his behavior. When he withdraws or lashes out, you tell yourself it's because he's been through a lot. This dynamic is often called trauma bonding, but not in the dramatic sense people usually imagine. It's subtle. The connection deepens during moments of crisis, then weakens when things are calm. Emotional intensity replaces emotional security. Over time, the relationship becomes centered on managing his pain instead of growing together. Your needs are postponed. Your boundaries soften. You stay empathetic even when the emotional cost becomes heavy. An emotionally healthy bond allows space for wounds without making one person the emotional caretaker. An emotionally broken man, however, unconsciously uses emotional closeness as a coping mechanism, reaching for connection when he's hurting, then pulling back once he feels regulated. The danger here is that you may confuse emotional depth with emotional health. But a relationship built on shared pain without healing will keep reopening the same wounds. You deserve connection that feels safe, steady, and mutual, not one that survives only on emotional intensity and unhealed trauma. Another revealing sign is selective presence. An emotionally broken man often appears exactly when it suits his emotional needs and disappears when it doesn't. He checks in when he's lonely, overwhelmed, bored, or needing reassurance. But when life is stable, busy, or emotionally demanding on your side, his presence becomes inconsistent or absent. At first, this pattern can be easy to rationalize. You tell yourself he's stressed, healing, or going through a lot. You make room for his timing. You stay flexible, and slowly, without noticing, the relationship begins to revolve around his availability rather than mutual effort. He may enter your life with warmth and familiarity, acting as though no distance occurred. There's rarely acknowledgement of the gap, no real explanation, and no accountability for how his absence affected you. He expects emotional access without emotional continuity. This behavior isn't about scheduling, it's about priority. When someone only shows up when it benefits them, they are using connection as a resource, not a responsibility. You become a safe place he can return to, rather than a partner he consistently invests in. An emotionally healthy man understands that presence builds trust. He may not always be available, but he communicates, follows through, and respects your emotional experience. An emotionally broken man, on the other hand, Treats connection like a switch, on when he needs comfort, off when he doesn't. Over time, this pattern teaches you to accept inconsistency as normal. You stop expecting reliability. You become grateful for the bare minimum, and that shift quietly erodes your self-worth. Consistency isn't too much to ask. If someone can only meet you when it's convenient, they are not offering connection. They're managing their own emotional needs at your expense. A key sign that an emotionally broken man is using a woman is his resistance to accountability, especially when emotions are involved. When conversations move beyond surface level connection and into feelings, expectations, or how his actions affect you, he becomes uncomfortable, defensive, or distant. He may change the subject, joke things away, or respond with vague statements that never lead anywhere. If you express hurt, he might minimize it, telling you that you're overthinking, too sensitive, or making it a bigger deal than it needs to be. Not directly cruel, but dismissive enough to make you question whether your emotions are valid. In some cases, he presents himself as self-aware. He may say things like, "I know I'm not perfect," or "I have issues I'm working on." But awareness without action becomes another avoidance strategy. These statements create the illusion of responsibility, while allowing the behavior to continue unchanged. Accountability requires emotional presence. It means sitting with discomfort, acknowledging impact, and making adjustments. An emotionally broken man often lacks the internal capacity to do this. Taking responsibility threatens the emotional defenses he's built to survive his own pain. Over time, this dynamic teaches you to suppress your needs. You choose silence over conflict. You downplay your feelings to maintain connection. And slowly, the relationship becomes emotionally lopsided, where his comfort is protected and yours is negotiable. Healthy relationships grow through honest conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. But when someone consistently avoids emotional depth and accountability, it's not because the conversations are unreasonable. It's because he isn't equipped or willing to show up fully. And without accountability, intimacy cannot deepen. It only stalls, leaving you emotionally invested in a connection that never truly progresses. One of the most emotionally damaging signs is when he subtly makes you feel guilty for having normal relationship needs. When you ask for clarity, consistency, or emotional reassurance, the focus quickly shifts from the issue itself to you for bringing it up. He may sigh, shut down, or say things like, "I thought you understood where I'm at," or "I told you I'm not in a place to give more right now." On the surface, these words sound honest, but underneath, they function as emotional deflection. Instead of addressing your needs, he frames them as pressure, expectation, or emotional burden. Over time, you begin to internalize this message. You start questioning whether you're asking for too much. You rehearse conversations in your head, trying to sound easygoing or low maintenance. You soften your needs before you even express them, just to avoid triggering his withdrawal. This is how emotional imbalance deepens. His limitations become protected while your needs are slowly silenced. He gets to remain comfortable, unchanged, and unchallenged, while you carry the emotional weight of the relationship. An emotionally healthy partner welcomes conversations about growth, even when they're uncomfortable. He may not always be able to meet every need immediately, but he doesn't shame you for having them. When someone makes you feel guilty for wanting emotional security, it's a sign they benefit from your self-doubt, because the less you ask for, the more they get to take without giving. And love should never require you to shrink yourself to keep someone else comfortable. When you remain in a dynamic where emotional effort isn't returned, the damage doesn't happen all at once, it happens quietly, over time. At first, you may still feel confident, grounded in who you are. You tell yourself you're being patient, understanding, compassionate. But slowly, the imbalance begins to change how you see yourself. Each unanswered message, each cancelled plan, each moment your feelings are dismissed plants a small seed of doubt. You start asking internal questions you never needed to ask before. Am I asking for too much? Did I say something wrong? If I were more understanding, would he stay consistent? These questions don't come from insecurity. They're learned through repeated emotional inconsistency. Over time, your standards begin to shift. What once felt unacceptable starts to feel normal. You adjust your expectations downward, convincing yourself that emotional crumbs are better than emotional absence. You become grateful for effort that should be basic, and you tolerate behaviors you would never advise someone else to accept. This erosion of self-worth often shows up subtly. You hesitate before expressing needs. You over-explain your feelings. You feel anxious instead of secure, uncertain instead of chosen. And eventually, you may start believing that love requires endurance rather than mutual care. The most painful part is that none of this reflects your value. It reflects the environment you've been in. When someone consistently benefits from your emotional presence without honoring it, your nervous system adapts to instability. You begin to confuse tension with connection and inconsistency with chemistry. But self-worth can be rebuilt. The moment you recognize that your needs are valid, and that consistency is not too much to ask, you begin reversing the damage. Because real love doesn't diminish you over time. It reinforces who you already are. Staying in a relationship with an emotionally broken man, even when you love him, comes with a hidden cost: your emotional health. The longer you remain, the more subtle patterns of neglect, inconsistency, and manipulation begin to shape your sense of self. What may have started as hope or compassion slowly becomes emotional depletion. Every time he takes without giving, withdraws when you need support, or avoids accountability, your emotional energy is drained. You begin overthinking, overcompensating, and questioning your worth. This constant cycle of hope and disappointment creates emotional fatigue, where anxiety, self-doubt, and guilt quietly replace confidence, peace, and self-assurance. Over time, staying longer reinforces a dangerous belief that your value depends on your tolerance, patience, or ability to fix someone else. You start bending your boundaries, excusing behaviors you once knew were unacceptable, and minimizing your own needs to preserve the connection. This gradual erosion doesn't just affect how you feel in the relationship, it spills into every area of life: your work, friendships, and even your ability to trust future partners. Another key issue is emotional habituation. The longer you remain, the more your nervous system adapts to instability. What once felt jarring or hurtful begins to feel normal. Emotional neglect becomes expected, and you stop noticing patterns that would have raised red flags in the beginning. This makes leaving even harder, because your tolerance has been rewritten by repeated exposure to imbalance. Ultimately, staying longer doesn't just risk heartbreak, it risks losing touch with yourself. Your needs, your boundaries, and your emotional health slowly fade behind the hope that things will improve. Recognizing this early is crucial. Love should nourish and support you, not drain and diminish you. The sooner you acknowledge that, the sooner you can reclaim your peace and start prioritizing your emotional well-being. When you realize that an emotionally broken man is using you, the first step toward healing is emotional detachment. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you reclaim your energy and set boundaries that protect your well-being. Start by recognizing the patterns. Journaling or reflecting on his behavior helps you separate his actions from your worth. Understand that his inconsistency, withdrawal, or avoidance is about his unhealed pain, not a reflection of your value. Naming the behavior objectively reduces emotional entanglement. Next, set clear boundaries. Decide what you will and won't accept, and communicate it calmly. This could mean limiting contact, refusing to take on responsibility for his emotional state, or ending conversations that leave you drained. Boundaries are not punishment, they are self-preservation. Third, reduce overthinking and emotional chasing. Stop replaying conversations, analyzing his motives, or waiting for changes that may never come. Replace this mental energy with self-focused practices: exercise, hobbies, creative work, or connecting with friends and family who respect and uplift you. Practice emotional mindfulness. When feelings of longing or guilt arise, acknowledge them without acting on them. Breathe, reflect, and remind yourself: I am responsible for my emotions, not his. Emotional detachment is gradual. It grows each time you choose your peace over reacting to his presence or absence. Finally, cultivate your support system. Surround yourself with people who validate your experience and reinforce your boundaries. Professional guidance, therapy, coaching, or support groups, can accelerate recovery and help you regain trust in yourself. Detaching emotionally doesn't mean you stop loving, it means you stop sacrificing your stability for someone else's unhealed wounds. It's a practice of self-respect, clarity, and reclaiming the power that belongs solely to you. Once you master this, you'll no longer be pulled into cycles that drain you, and you'll attract relationships where care and respect are mutual. At the end of the day, recognizing that an emotionally broken man is using you is only the first step. The next, and most important, step is choosing yourself. Self-respect means refusing to shrink, excuse, or compromise your emotional well-being for someone who cannot meet you halfway. Understand that love is not about fixing, tolerating, or waiting. Love thrives on mutual care, consistency, and accountability. When these are absent, staying in confusion or hope slowly erodes your confidence and your sense of worth. Every compromise you make for the sake of his comfort chips away at the energy and clarity you deserve. Choosing self-respect is also about setting boundaries without guilt. It's about walking away from cycles of inconsistency, emotional extraction, or guilt tripping. It's about valuing your peace more than the possibility of changing someone who is not ready to heal. Remember, detachment doesn't make you cold, it makes you wise. It's the practice of protecting your heart while allowing space for someone capable of real connection. When you prioritize yourself, you no longer cling to what diminishes you, and you open the door to relationships that truly reflect your worth. Self-respect isn't optional, it's essential, and once you claim it, everything else falls into clarity.